But now we have Wil Becker. Wil Becker is here in the room with us. He comes to us from Wilmington in West Virginia. He's going to speak on a topic I'm really looking forward to: kid leadership, teaching kids to be leaders. Now, Wil is a writer, a podcaster, a speaker, coach, entrepreneur, and father of 4 boys, all teenagers. He has served the several leadership roles over the last 25 years. He's been a youth pastor, a congregational leader, an assistant pastor, and has also served the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts of America as a scoutmaster, an assistant scoutmaster, and a den leader. Wil moved up in his professional life because of his love of technology, leadership skills, and his consistent self-education. He loves to teach and helps others grow and excel. Wil seeks to learn from his best from the best books, audios, events, and mentors. Connect with Wil at turningleafs.com. Please join me in welcoming Wil Becker.
I'm excited to be here. This is my first in-person speaking event. While I have spoken many times at different venues, this is my first one at a place like this. So I like to dive right in. Fantastic. Excellent. So I want to start with a story. When I was about 14 years old, I helped my dad and one of my brothers to move someone. And my dad always conscripted us to help somebody, and with moving or anything else that somebody needed. Growing up in the Army, as an Army brat, we got lots of service in different ways. So what happened with this is my dad asked us during the week, hey, what are you doing on Saturday? Nothing, right? Because, teenagers, nothing. No plans, really. And so he said, okay, we're moving somebody. Saturday morning comes, we load up in the car with my dad, and we drive into Baltimore. And this gentleman lived on the 3rd floor. And so we were moving his stuff out of his apartment and loading it in the van or whatever it was. I don't remember. So what happens is there's 3 candy dishes on the counter in the kitchen. And I mean, it's a small kitchen. I could probably put one hand on the counter and touch the fridge. It was that small. And he said, hey guys, if you want a piece of candy, just grab one. It's going to get packed up later towards the end of the day. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. Went about working, helping move stuff around. I walked by the kitchen. I thought, man, I'm going to have a Hershey Kiss. Grabbed a Hershey Kiss and ate it. Went on, rest of the day. When we finished moving, we had dinner. That was the payment for the work we did. And we sat on this guy's living room floor on the rug and ate dinner and talked. And my dad and him shared stories with the Army, different things that had happened. And when we left, my brother rode shotgun with my dad, and I sat in the middle, right behind him. And I have a very clear image as we're driving through Baltimore. The sun was setting, almost like a Western, and my dad's driving, my brother's sitting there. My dad says, boys, I'm really proud of you today. You gave an honest day's work for an honest day's wage. And let me tell you what, I felt that big. Because my parents had taught me that even when somebody offers you something, if you don't accept it right away, circumstances may change. And so ask again, just in case. Well, that set my entire work ethic for the rest of my life. And it framed for me the things that I needed to do as either an employee or a teammate in a team, and really helped me to think about the work that I do, no matter what kind of work, to think about the effort I put into it. And what this is a great example of is my first point here, that more lessons are caught than taught. As adults, some of us have children around us. Some of us don't have as many children around us. And what happens is they observe our behavior. And as they do that, they learn. I can't tell you how many times I went to the motor pool with my dad on a Saturday and he let me climb around the vehicles, or me and my siblings play in the yard or whatever while they worked. And I saw how hard they worked. And I knew that hard work was something that Becker's did. And so when it comes to the youth around us and the children around us, they're paying attention to the things that we do. And so one of the things that we need to do is to be mindful of that. I know no one's perfect. We all have bad days. But that being said, we can still adjust for that in how we interact. The next point is to read, listen, and associate. I'm a huge proponent for reading. If you follow me on social media at all, you see quotes and books. Every time I finish a book, I share that because it is the fastest, cheapest cheat code in life. You get somebody's 20, 40, 80 years of wisdom distilled in a 8, 9, 24-hour read, and you get to take from that the things that you need. And things will stand out as you read. And I know I have friends that, I'm not about how fast you read. It's about, are you doing it? Are you putting in the time? And as an adult with kids around me, I believe it's very important to read, not only because of leadership, but because it helps me to reframe some of my choices. The second one is to listen. You can find podcasts, you can find leadership learning platforms, you can follow all sorts of different audio programs or podcasts out there that you can learn leadership from. And not just leadership, but how to lead, good and bad examples. Plenty of those in Army life growing up that I saw. And what it allows us to do is, again, borrow from somebody else's experiences to learn from the story they tell, whether it's their own life experience or they're sharing something else. And then who do you associate with? Who are you spending time with? There's a common game when I was a kid, the let me get right. 7 Shades of Kevin Bacon, because he was in so many films when I was a teenager that you could go from film to film that he was in and just go through different actors and actresses that were in films with him. It's the same thing in real life. I think it's the rule of 5, where the 5 people that you spend the most time with tend to dictate your attitude, your outlook, your income, and several other factors. So how can we level up? Or as Claire said, how can we expand? What other rooms or associations can we tie into where we might be the little fish going into the big pool, but there are people there that are going to welcome and invite so that we can step into that environment and learn and grow. The next one is your circle of influence versus your circle of concern. Our circle of influence is very, very small. For the average person, it's right here. It's this sphere that sits on top of our heads. That is where we can have the most influence, is the things that we think about, our attitude, our behavior. Our circle of concern can be massive, but most of us don't have the resources, the connections to do massive things to affect those concerns. So the best way to start is to start with ourselves, the things that we can do to improve ourselves. And as we do that, other people will take notice. For example, I don't have someone in my community right now that, nor do I have time to go to a gym and work out. However, I just got a message this week from a guy who saw my posts about my workouts and decided to go back to the gym himself. I didn't put it there for that. I put it there because I needed to be accountable. And since I didn't have an accountability partner, I knew that some of my social media friends would say something. And Susie right here comments almost every single morning, 5 minutes after I post it. So she's an early riser. So as we work on ourselves, the influence we can have, that expands. That gentleman getting back into the gym, that was not my intent, but that's a reflection, a ripple of me just working on myself. One of my favorite quotes is by a gentleman, Chris Brady, and it's, "You can't take the same old self into a bright new future. You're only going to darken it." And as Claire talked about expanding and growing, that's really what self-education is all about. And if you can't tell yet, I'm a huge proponent of self-education because in my own personal life, I have seen it take a guy who his kids didn't care whether he traveled for work and was gone or not, to being the guy when he was gone, his wife calls to check in at the end and he says, the weirdest thing happened tonight. And I'm thinking, okay, the fire alarms went off because I forgot to change the batteries. Maybe the garbage disposal broke. Like, I'm thinking of things like that. She's like, your three youngest boys cried themselves to sleep tonight because you weren't there to tuck them in. I was like, what? In 6 years of travel for this job, that never happened. That's weird. I don't understand. 3 weeks later, I came back from another business trip. And what happened is I was able to arrange my travel and I got home in time for dinner on Friday. And Friday nights in our home is pizza and movie night, which is fun for me and enjoyable for the kids because they love pizza and I love to pick a movie that sometimes they don't like, but we'll sit through anyways. And they've gotten some good experience of it. But those same three boys after dinner climbed on my lap and sat with me in my chair. And at that point, I knew that I was on the right path to change not only my life, but to change theirs for the better. Because the associations that I tied into, the leadership learning platform I had found for myself was paying dividends. And I could see that because of how my children responded to me when I was gone. Another thing is that when you're in pursuit of a goal, those around you will notice that. And those children and those people that you associate will see that when you fight for your dreams and you have a good attitude about it, they will learn to love growth. And they will see it differently. They will do things different than you or me because they're different people. But what that does is it gives them the okay that you can try something new and fail. You can try something new and be bad at it. One of the things my kids say is, oh, I'm so bad at doing the dishes. You're 10. You've done the dishes 3 times in your life. You haven't had enough time to get good at it. You're just barely getting started. On the other hand, as I'm talking to this son, I've been doing dishes for over 30 years. I have a little experience. All you have to do is keep practicing. But that applies to so many other things. And so when they see us actually being active, going after those things and working towards that, even if they don't understand what the results are going to be for you, they see that you're in the fight and they see that you're working for it. Now, you know that I was going to have to bring up a movie, right? So if you haven't seen Kung Fu Panda, I highly suggest you watch it because it's a phenomenal movie about a big fat panda who loves Kung Fu, okay? So the small character here is Master Shifu, and he's a red panda. And he is supposed to train Po, who's the big fat panda, how to do Kung Fu. Because Master Shifu was told by his master that Po was supposed to be the dragon warrior. He was going to save them from this really bad guy who was going to destroy the valley they lived in. And Shifu at first didn't believe that Po could do it. But what happened is he decided to believe in what he was told by his master, his teacher, and he decided to believe that Po could do it. He just didn't know how. So in the movie, Po's in the kitchen and he's eating all the food because he's nervous, he's scared. And Master Shifu finds him and he's looking around the kitchen. And he's like, what in the world happened in here? And he sees Po stuffing his face. And he says, you know, Monkey's cookies, almond cookies are 10 feet up on the shelf. There's a beam actually. And so what happens is he goes back around the corner, comes back in, and Po is 10 feet up doing perfect splits, eating the almond cookies that Monkey hid there. And so Master Shifu figured out how he can motivate Po, what he needed to use to get him to learn what he needed to learn. As parents, as leaders, when we understand those that we're working with, we can then direct them. Because going back to more lessons are caught than taught, we need to learn too about them, whether it's our kids, whether it's coworkers. We need to understand them, what motivates them, what drives them. And then as we learn about them, we learn to love them. And when we learn to love them, we can then lead them. And especially with kids. I was visiting my brother in Texas one time, another business trip, and I was having dinner with his family. And his youngest son had done something, gotten in trouble. But my brother brought him back after he gave him some space and gave him a big hug and reminded him, said, Timothy, I love you. You made a mistake. It's okay. And when he showed that increase of love after discipline, it melted my heart. And I went home and put it into practice. And I play a game with my kids. When they get upset at me, I ask them, who do you love? And the first answer should always be mom. The second answer usually is Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, because we're Christians. And the game is that they're not supposed to say me because I'm the one that gave the discipline. But usually what happens is they start laughing and we just have a good time. Because I learned from that example from my brother that I can inject love into a situation, even if it's difficult and even if it's hard. The next thing is from Ben Franklin, and it's to speak all the good you can of everyone. If you're not familiar with Ben Franklin, his autobiography is like the second best-selling book in the world after the Bible. He was notorious for just attacking people and tearing down their arguments. And one of his older friends pulled him aside and said, Ben, people don't like you. You're brilliant, but the way you go about it is terrible. And people would literally cross the street if they saw him coming or walk the other way because they didn't want to have an argument with them, even though they were friends. So Ben worked on himself. He read, probably didn't listen as much as we can now, but he did attend his own meeting that he built with like-minded people. So he listened and associated. And that started to change. So he went from an apprentice and a writer to eventually becoming the prominent printer in Philadelphia, which then led him to becoming a scientist. We're all familiar probably of the image of Ben Franklin flying a kite, but that then led to being a statesman. His life was built on learning. He said that you can pour your wallet into your head and no one can take that knowledge from you. So one of my mentors says that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, but you would darn well better know something. Warren says that all the time. He's constantly reminding us to read, listen, and associate. And he tells people, if you have trouble reading, take one page out of it, cut it out of the book, read it at lunchtime, front and back, throw it away. If you are more consistent with reading, then carry your book with you. One of my business partners in West Virginia, when he first started working with me, hadn't read in a long time. I'm super proud of him because now he carries his book with him everywhere he goes. When he has a couple minutes, he'll read. And the improvement I've seen in him associating with the leaders that we're learning from has been phenomenal. And I tell people about it all the time. So, are you investing in yourself daily? Are you reading? Are you listening? Are you associating? The associating part might be harder. Maybe you have people at a distance and you cannot work with them on a daily basis. Maybe you can have an accountability group instead. Right now, I'm in an accountability group where as we listen to different audios and we read, we share an insight that we got from that audio, from that book that we're reading. There is so much that we can do in small increments of time that it allows us to learn. Really, our growth is small steps over a long period of time. So my call to action is, what's the next book you're going to read? Do you have a shelf? Like I have 2 feet of books in my office that are books to be read. And I know when the next book is to read because every time I look at that shelf, that spine pops out and I know that's the next book. The next is, who are you associating with? Who are you spending time with? Can you level up? Can you get invited to a room where you can learn from other people? And the last thing is, what is your next event that you are going to attend? Do you know what it is? I have one in 2 weeks. And then I have one every month. And then I have one also coming up in February. I know about when those dates are. And then I look for other opportunities in my community locally where I can associate, because the networking, the connecting is really what helps us with our business side of things. But like Chris Brady said, we can't take our old self into a bright new future.
I'm taking a breath because you mentioned the book and the meeting, and both of those are such great questions. For those who are in the room, raise your hand if you have a question, or sir, are you just fixing your hair? I'm not sure. But there are 2 great books that are right here at the book table, Transformation Triumphs and Women Living in Alignment. That's for my wife. Okay, so Pearl, did you get any Zoomers with a question for Will?
No, not any questions right now, but this is a one more call out to everyone on Zoom. If you have a question for Will, we do have a few minutes.
Okay. I'll come to you. I got this. Don't be shy now. We're good.
Will, what brought you to working with children? Did your children bring you to working with other children? I know that you're involved in the Scouts.
No. So the church I belong to is a volunteer army, and we get invited to serve in different capacities. And so over the years, I was continually invited back to work with the young men in our church. The age group is 12 to 18. And I spend Sundays usually teaching a lesson or helping one of the youth teach a lesson. And then I also teach Sunday. Right now, I also teach a Sunday school class that's 15 to 18. And so over the years, I was just continually invited back to that. And so I've continually had opportunities to serve in that capacity. And then when it comes to the Scouts, I was a Scout initially. And when my boys were old enough, they wanted to participate. And so they needed leaders. And well, there was this dad standing around with his hands in his pocket. So I got voluntold by my wife to go do some good.
You have left us awestruck, but Mark has a question, so that's going to save me some time. Our official MC, Mr. Mark, are you MC Mark? Are you Marky Mark? And Will and the Funky Bunch?
Will, first class presentation. I appreciate it. You mentioned, of course, learning, how important it is to learn. How important it is then to, like what you're doing today, sharing that, what you learn with other people.
Ooh, great question.
Well, I think it started when I was a kid. I would often find my dad with a auto mechanic manual, a Chilton's manual for a car repair, or the dictionary, or the thesaurus, or some other information that he was reading. And that is where I got that start. I didn't realize it then by watching him and seeing what he was doing, and then being invited by him to help with the car or to go serve other people. And so those are events that then accumulated to me being willing then to serve people and to be able to share those lessons learned. And so when Jamie invited me, I was first deeply honored, and then very glad to come and to share.
So, Will, how old are your children?
They are 18, 16, 12, and 10. Yes, they are all boys. My wife, she's a saint. That if there was such a thing as a golden ticket, she should have one. So,
And you mentioned that you
Scott,
enjoy reading the Bible with the family. Yes, go ahead, Pearl.
I'm
Save
sorry.
me.
We do have a couple of questions coming in from our online audience.
Okay, great. Go for it.
First question for you, Will, is, and thank you so much for everything you shared. You're getting some love here in the chat. First one is, can you offer any wisdom to a child or anyone on how to balance leadership and social interaction?
so I think the first thing is that you have to be willing to put yourself out there. Because when it comes to social interaction, you need to be involved in some community, whether it is your school as a youth, whether it is your church, whether it is your synagogue or your gym or wherever. And then you work on yourself. The real wisdom comes from the learning, the self-education, because the right things that you need will stand out to you. I am the kind of person who likes to argue with the author. So I underline, highlight, scratch out words I disagree with and write my own instead. And so it's a process that we should not get discouraged by because it takes time, but it pays off.
Thank you. And since we're running up a little bit out of time, last question here from Claire. And is there a part of the Bible that you like to read or something about leadership in the Bible?
Well, there's a lot of it about leadership in the Bible. There's not any particular story that stands out the most to me that's like a favorite. Although I do really enjoy the story of Esther this year. I've gone back and watched several different movies of the portrayal, read the book of Esther. The theme of her story is she was prepared for such a time as this. And I really believe, whether you're a Christian or not, that people right now need more good leaders in their lives and in their associations.